Saint Sword may be one of the most intriguing games I've had the pleasure of discovering in recent years. What really made this game stand out to me before even playing it were two things. One is the artwork insert for the case. Now, most Sega Genesis art inserts have obstructions in the form of a banner that reinforces the Sega Genesis logo, or other borders that separate the art from the edges of the box. Saint Sword, not so. The artwork takes up the full space. Every little corner of the paper is detailed with vibrancy and color. And not to mention, the artwork on the case is just flat out interesting and makes me want to know more about what this game is about. The other thing that made this game stand out off the bat was the interesting choice of title, Saint Sword. Never in my familiarity with the English language have I heard two words of these sorts put together. Saint Sword. And to some effect, it doesn't surprise me that this game fell into the depths of obscurity and that most are probably not familiar with the game outside of this review. Still, there is a very logical reasoning to the title of the game. If you watch the game's intro sequence, you will learn how the main character, Macris, is given the honorary title Saint Sword of the Titans. So immediately, I wanted to check this game out. So that I did, and here's what I thought off the bat. That's how you start a game. As you can see, it started off quite favorably. But I did think initially that this game bore a lot in common with other fantasy warrior action adventure games of the time. Your Golden Axe, your Roston, even Altered Beast. They felt very much similar, and I didn't know what it was separating this game from the pack until I got more into it. So initially I just thought this was a hack and slash dungeon crawling type of game where you collect a key from an enemy that drops it, use that key to open a door to find your way to a boss, defeat boss, move on to the next stage, so on, so forth. Standard fare. But then I discovered some of the items that I was picking up. They were interesting because I didn't know how to use them, and then I realized from my experience playing Revenge of Shinobi that you actually have to pause the game, go to the item, and use it. And much to my surprise, my character turned into something completely different. An angel with a sword. How about that? A centaur that can jump extremely high. Wow! A mermaid that can impale enemies underwater and swims like a fish. That was perfect for those awful waddling sequences. So as you can see, the transformations alone really change this game into something else, and really make it something distinct and almost iconic in a way of that Genesis style. There's a couple other interesting things that occur, such as when the player manages to defeat a certain number of enemies, the color of their armor will change, as does their strength, and if they can keep that up without dying, they'll keep going up in strength until the third threshold, whereupon they can earn bonus lives. Now, just as the main character can increase their power, so too do the enemies as the stages progress, and thus the game gets logically harder. Actually, one of the most interesting points about this game is the exploration itself, because the enemy unit that the key is located in will never be specified, it's never the same one, even during the next time that you play through the game. However, the structure of the stage will always remain the same, so it'll always make you work your brain as to what area you haven't explored yet, and keep you on your toes. Now, there is a time limit, but I haven't really run into any issues with that on either of my playthroughs of the game. That being said, this game is not without its faults. The first is that the enemy attack patterns can be quite annoying from time to time. Sometimes taking damage is almost inevitable, no matter what transformation you use. So it's advisable to sort of hack and slash your way through, but trying to do so in as orderly a means as possible. The boss battles as well range from being decent challenges to simple and formulaic. Now, I don't mind, a simple boss battle, but sometimes they kind of made it a bit easy in this game. You can always turn the difficulty up, but that brings me to my last criticism for this game, which I think is its cardinal sin, is that after you beat the game on the first playthrough, it will ask you to play through it again in order to see the true ending. So does that mean you have to play the game twice in order to see the true ending? No, not at all, because I'm about to give you the password so you can start from the first stage on the second playthrough. But I do recommend that you play the game twice anyway, because on the first playthrough the game will give you navigational tips helping you to get through each stage. And it's nice to have these, especially when the game can seem a bit confusing and take a bit of warming up to on your first playthrough. But this brings me into perhaps the strongest point of this game, which is, in my eyes, the soundtrack and even the presentation to a degree. The soundtrack just has a very mystical quality to it that almost speaks to the sorcery and mythos inherent in the game, and makes the player feel almost entangled in this dark and enchanting adventure. In general, I also like the incorporation of mythological elements. This game almost harkens back to Altered Beast a little bit. We see some replica character designs as well as concepts overall. So I think people who enjoy Altered Beast as well as other classic arcade style warrior adventure games will feel right at home with Saint Sword. And that brings me into the last point. Will you enjoy this game? I think the big thing here is you have to have some appreciation for that mythological tie-in, as well as going back to old school Genesis games of the time, because this game is rugged and gritty. But if you like that, then this game will be right up your alley. So Saint Sword, it's definitely a distinct game with some strong identity. It does have a few setbacks that may detract some potential players, but if you can look over them and appreciate the game for what it does well, I think you'll walk away with something positive from the experience. So that's it for Saint Sword. Awesome cover, beautiful art, and in general just a very creative design from the folks over at Taito. I'm not sure why they didn't give this game more love in their Taito Legends discs, or any for that matter, but it's still nice to go back and discover, especially in its original form. So thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed the review, and see you next time here in the Turbo Zone. Turbo Zone! Turbo.